Thank you all again for attending. My name is Corey Ayanaji, and I am a Ballantine Gallery Manager at History Colorado Center and the Voces and Arte Programming Coordinator. Before we begin, in the spirit of healing and education, we acknowledge the 48 contemporary tribes with historic ties to the state of Colorado. These tribes are our partners. We consult with them when we plan exhibits, collect, preserve, and interpret artifacts, do archaeological work, and create educational programs. We recognize these indigenous peoples as the original inhabitants of this land. Thank you again for attending, and we're so happy to have you with us today. Voces and Arte was created in partnership with the Latino Cultural Arts Center to coincide with History Colorado's newest exhibit in the Ballantine Gallery, Hecho in Colorado. For more information about the exhibit, you can check out the exhibit website, and what I'll do is I'll put a link to that in the chat for you below. We are thrilled to bring together these artists who are all in Hecho in Colorado for a 7-part series of conversations to talk about the importance of Chicano and Mexicano art in the state of Colorado. But before we begin and move on to introductions, I'd like to explain how this program is going to work digitally. The first thing I want to talk about is the chat box. This is where I will be sharing program resources like the link I just shared below, and this is where you will be able to communicate with me and the artists. If you have tech questions, this is where you will put them. Some people might see the dialog boxes differently depending on your tablet or if you're on an iPhone or an Android, but we will do our best to accommodate all devices. At the end of the program, we will have some time for questions and answers. Please write them in the box and we'll do our best to get them all answered. And I do want to mention again that this program does have live Spanish interpretation for the duration of the program. If you would like to use this service, just please tap the interpretation icon and select Spanish and then select mute original sound. If you would like to go back to hearing the program in English, select the interpretation icon again and just click off. Do not select the English tab or you're not going to hear anything. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the moderator of our program, Adriana Abarca. Adriana is the founder of the Latino Cultural Arts Center. She was born and raised in Northwest Denver and holds a BA degree in Latin American Studies from CU Boulder. After graduating, she worked in the arts in San Francisco for 5 years, including at the Mexican Museum, and traveled extensively throughout the United States and Mexico to build her knowledge of cultural representation. Her parents started the Abarca family collection as a way of supporting the work of artist friends in Colorado and Mexico. Currently, she is the exhibiting curator for the Hecho in Colorado exhibit now on view at History Colorado. Please welcome Adriana.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for History Colorado and AARP for sponsoring these lectures. So we're going to start by introducing Emanuel Martinez. He is a longstanding Denver artist. He was born and raised here in Denver. And for those who know him, you'll realize that he's a very established sculptor, painter, and muralist. He was very active during the Chicano civil rights movement here throughout Colorado and also nationally recognized. And so we're going to start the lecture with Emanuel Martinez and his imagery, and then we'll go on to introduce Victor Escobedo and his work. So we're going to start tonight's lecture with an image called La Curandera, which was painted by Emanuel in 1980. Emanuel, can you please tell us a little bit more about this painting that is exhibited in the Hecho en Colorado exhibit?
Yes, this painting was done following the, can you hear me okay? Adriana?
Not really. I can't hear you very well.
Okay. Well, this painting was done following a trip that I made with your father, Luis Abarca, to Tulancingo, Mexico, and on the way, he and I were taking numerous photographs in villages on the way because we drove over there, or I drove him, and from one of the photographs that I took of a woman standing between two pillars, wearing all black, uh, I I took that photograph and simplified it, uh, to the composition that you see now. But originally, uh, I didn't have the hole on the left-hand side in the pillar. So there's two pillars there, and there was a lot of activity going on. It was a mercado, and the way I suggested that is by putting these bright yellow and orange colors to represent energy. So there was a lot of energy going back behind there. And then composition wise, I had the painting like that for quite some time, and then I realized that it was too flat, and it needed some kind of sculptural element. So I decided just to put a hole inside the pillar. So that's what the whole means, but it's just a compositional element that I thought would complement the piece.
So for those in our audience who aren't familiar, a curandera is a healer in the native tradition. Had you gone into the indigenous parts of Mexico prior to your trip with my father, or were you mostly only familiar with Mexico City and the mestizo community of Mexico City?
Well, I had been to Mexico before. I hitchhiked to Mexico the first time when I was 19 years old. I hitchhiked from Denver to Mexico City to go work with David Alfaro Siqueiros.
Can you turn the volume up just a tiny bit, please, Emanuel? Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Oh.
Folks in the audience, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with his volume, so periodically he's going to have to stop and turn the volume back up.
Okay. Is that better?
Slightly.
Okay.
There
So,
you go. That's
okay.
better.
Okay. Like I was saying, I had been to Mexico prior to that when I hitchhiked with a Puerto Rican friend of mine, Carmelo Sobrino, who's a very famous artist now in Puerto Rico. And he and I hitchhiked to Mexico City to see if we could work with David Alfaro Siqueiros. And this was in 1967 when he was working on the mural, The March of Humanity in Latin America, which is the largest mural in the world and also his last mural. And he didn't need our help then, but he said if we came back the following year, the building wasn't even finished. So that he was going to, we visited in Cuernavaca at his studio, and he said if we came back in about a year, he could put us to work. And I did return a year after that in the early part of 1969, and it was during that time and the first time I went that I was exposed to all the Mexican murals by Diego Rivera and Siqueiros and Orozco and Camarena and a lot of other artists. So it was that trip that was the most influential on me and my career and my technique and some of my visions, which kind of relate very much to the same kind of emphasis that the great Mexican muralists put on the imagery of indigenous people. So I've been doing that since then. So I was in Mexico before I went with your father.
And can I ask you some more about this painting, La Paloma? It's also the representation of a native Mexican woman, perhaps a little younger. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired this particular painting, which is also in the Hecho en Colorado exhibit?
Well, this painting, you know, you just initially, you know, was just a.
We lost you again, Emanuel. So if you can, I think after before you speak every time, you're going to need to put the volume back up.
Okay, well, I'm holding.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm holding it down, but yeah, this painting essentially, you know, was just one of those paintings that, you know, initially I don't really know. You know, I didn't do a sketch like I do sometimes to plan out a painting, but this one just I painted directly on the canvas, and I had I you know I started off with her face and the gesture of her hands, arms sticking out, and the Paloma was actually an afterthought that I added onto it, and some of the design elements you see, you know, in her clothing and headdress, and you know, are just some kind of signature type designs that I like to put in some of my work to kind of reflect, you know, some pre-Columbian symbolism. So the Paloma, I really felt that something needed to bring the viewer's eye back into the painting. So the bird, which Paloma means in English, you know, kind of suggests as a dove, which it represents peace, and the dove is like I said, bringing the viewer's eye back into the eyes of the woman, and vice versa. So
I think it's beautiful how you tie in the native culture with nature, and also how you represent females in a very dignified way. And also that you treat the native people as if they are worthy of being held up, and again, very distinguished subjects. So now we're looking at an image entitled Valley Shepherd, which you created probably, I would say, in the late 1970s, early 80s as well. And can you tell us a little bit more about this piece? Because I would say that it's not typical of your work in that it's black and white. And then also the subject being more of an Hispano, maybe we know that the shepherds originally came from the Basque Country in northern Spain to the Southwest United States. Can you tell us a little bit more about this subject, why you chose this subject?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to explain that there's a period of time when I did this, I was doing quite a few charcoal.
I lost you again, Emanuel. I can't hear you again. I'm sorry.
That during this
There you
period,
go.
during this time, I was doing a lot of experimental charcoal drawings, mainly based on some of the things I learned from Richard Schmidt, who was a master, I believe, at charcoal drawings and Conte crayon. And I was experimenting. I believe this piece, if I remember, was done on masonite, and the way it was done actually is through by taking charcoal. After I put a gesso finish on the panel, I put a coat of acrylic medium, and then I wet it, and then I sprinkled charcoal over it. And so with that, it's actually like charcoal painting. It's not just like, you know, a lot here where most artists just use charcoal on paper. So this was actually a painting charcoal in the style of Richard Schmidt. Now, in terms of the subject matter, we have relatives from Spain who were Basque, and I thought, I did this from a sheep herder who was Basque. I think you hit it right, and it was it lent itself uh, has a black and white photograph I was working from. It lent itself well to a lot of texture, which I was trying to accomplish in the composition and the technique I was using with water and charcoal.
It's a very beautiful piece, and I'm fortunate that my father purchased that from you back in the day. So now we're going to go on to some of your earlier work. We'll start with the image on my right hand side, Tierra Muarte. So can you tell us a little bit more about that piece, which you created in 1967?
Yes, the Tierra Muerte poster was done kind of underground. The reason I say that is because following the Tierra Maria raid by Reyes Lopez Tijerina, who was the leader of the land grant struggle, they literally raided the courthouse in Tierra Maria, and the National Guard was called in, and they were arrested. And following that incident, I was living in New Mexico at the time, in Pilar, with Rennie Templeton and John Dupuy, her significant other, and she taught me how to do silk screening. She's mainly a graphic artist and did a lot of work for the Chicano movement and internationally in Cuba and other places. So she's very, very good at graphics. And anyway, I wanted to create something. This was my first try at silk screen, and she showed me how to do it. I actually cut this out of a stencil, and I wanted to, the whole reason for doing this piece, Tierra o Muerte means land or death. And I thought it would be a good poster, symbolic of what was going on in Tierra Maria, and which is a movement that I really believed in. And I felt that this poster would be good to post all over, which we did underground at night. We were posting them all over northern New Mexico.
So for the viewers who aren't familiar, the subject matter is Emiliano Zapata, who was a leader in southern Mexico for the Mexican Revolution, which started in approximately 1910. So Emanuel, since this was recently exhibited in Mexico City, can you tell us a little bit more about the occasion of the exhibition?
Yeah, that was a great collection of.
I lost you again.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, that was a really good collection of paintings and graphics done of Emiliano Zapata, who you just mentioned, was basically known for for the land struggle, and that's the very reason why I use him in the imagery, is because land or death was some words that he spoke and became very famous. And but anyway, that exhibit at the Palacio de Bellas Artes was a very good example of major artists in Mexico and internationally that have used the image of Zapata in their artwork. So I was invited because this piece is in the Museum of American Art in the permanent collection at the Smithsonian, Washington D.C. And speaking of that, the next month they are opening a show there where they're going to be featuring this poster also in the graphics of the revolutionary Chicano art.
So in addition to the Tierra Muerte, you also have the farm workers altar, which you created in the same year, that also belongs to the Smithsonian collection. Can you tell us a little bit more as to what inspired the creation of this beautiful altar?
In 1966,
We lost you, Emanuel.
was that?
There you go.
Okay. In 1966, I was one of the incorporators of the Crusade for Justice, which is a civil rights organization that Corky Gonzalez started. And that same year, we were supporting Cesar Chavez and his farm workers struggle to get better wages and better living conditions for farm workers. And he came to Denver to speak at the Union Hall, and I held my first art exhibit there. And I gave him one of my biggest paintings as a gift, and I had dinner with Cesar, and he asked if I would like to come out to Delano and work, with doing artwork, for the union, and at the time, I had no strings attached to anybody, so I did go work with him. I made $5 a week, and I lived with the Teatro Campesino, Luis Valdez and Daniel Valdez in the same house, and then I worked out in Bakersfield. But after I came back in the end of 1967, while still living in New Mexico, there was a commission by the Bishop of Los Angeles who wanted to create an altar for Cesar Chavez at the event where he's going to end his 25-day fast. And at this event, Robert F. Kennedy was there and a lot of other prominent leaders in Delano. And the bishop commissioned me to do this, to make this altar, so they could say, because they said mass a couple times on the altar, and so this altar, became a significant piece of artwork, and was shown. It was shown in the Kata exhibit, the Chicano art, the resistance and affirmation exhibit, and they chose this to go in that exhibit. And when it was on national tour, and it visited major museums, including the Denver Art Museum, and it moved on to the Smithsonian in Washington, and they wanted to buy the mural. I mean, they wanted to buy the altar, or they wanted it free at first. Then some of the Hispanic leaders that were there at the unveiling of this event of the altar said, well, I don't think they should get it for free. So they made a couple calls to some wealthy Mexicanos, a guy in Texas who was the head of a bank who has a lot of money, and just told him, we'd like to have you buy this piece and donate it to the Smithsonian, and that's what happened.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Tierra Muerte also in the Kata exhibit?
Yes, it was. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. There was that and some other of my work in it.
So Emanuel, if you can turn your volume up one more time, can you tell us more about this beautiful mural that you created many years ago originally and recently restored? It's a mural that you did for the La Alma Park Rec Center in the La Alma neighborhood here in West Denver. What inspired this piece, and when did you originally paint it?
Well, I painted this mural in 1978, and you know, I already had a history there at the park. I was the founder and first director of La Alma Recreation Center. I actually started the rec center in a little building uh, with an arts and crafts training program that I was implementing there. And I asked Parks and Rec if we could just turn it into a rec center. And but instead of being after a year of being a director, I wanted to paint murals because I had painted my first mural there in 1971, I believe, and then they built this. You know, I went to live in New Mexico for a while and came back in 1970. 77. There was a filmmaker. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
There was a filmmaker by the name of Millie Paul who in Denver had a film company, and she was interested in the murals that were going on at that time. Most of them were mine. There was a couple other muralists at the time. Carlos Sandoval was just starting, and Carlota Espinosa uh, and Roberto Lucero. And so anyway, so she wanted to make a film documenting the murals of Denver, and at that time I didn't have this mural. She said, "Do you think we could just do a mural?" I actually did two murals for this film. So I actually made this film. I mean, I did this mural for the film. I didn't get paid for the mural.
Hmm.
Just did it so it could be used for this film. And the reason they wanted to see it done within like a 1 minute time lapse type of presentation. So I started this mural with the help of young people in the neighborhood, like I do all of my murals. They took part in painting it, and you know I designed something pretty spontaneously. This is another one of those paintings that just evolved from you know from one composition. One thing suggested another to me, and I just kept adding on to it. So
So Emanuel, you mentioned that you work with youth a lot in your murals. I know that you've worked on a national scale with local, well, not just local, but also nationally with incarcerated youth. Could you tell us more or less how many projects you've worked on with these young men primarily throughout the United States?
yeah, we've done approximately 50 murals in 14 different states.
I'm losing you again on the volume.
I said we did 50 murals in 14 different states since 2011.
And what is the name of that project again?
It's called the Emmanuel Project.
Oh,
And that's a title that I didn't give it. It was the person that created the project that gave it its name. They named it after me because I did my first mural when I was incarcerated at the age of 13 at the Lookout Mountain School for Boys in Golden, Colorado. So she wanted to name it after me because the kids so you know could identify with working with me and knowing that I experienced what they did.
that's a beautiful legacy to leave. How many murals would you guess that you have created just here in Denver?
Uh, I'm not sure. Probably somewhere around 25, 30 of them maybe.
Hmm.
Uh, and you know a lot of them have been destroyed or painted over. So I've between that and other murals that I've done internationally too. You know I've done nearly 100 murals already.
Thank you, Emanuel. Thank you very much for sharing a little bit of your history. I'm sorry that we didn't have any examples of your sculptures, but you're also a very talented and well-established sculptor. So we're hoping that our viewers, if they're not familiar with your work, will go onto your website or just look you up on the internet and come see your work at the Hecho en Colorado exhibit. Now we're going to start a little conversation with Victor Escobedo. Welcome, Victor. Thanks for joining us and thanks for waiting.
Oh yeah,
Can
no
you hear
problem.
us? Okay,
Yeah,
here you
I
are.
can hear you guys just fine.
Nice to see you, Victor. So we're
Nice
going
to
to
see you.
start with this painting, which is part of the Hecho en Colorado exhibit. It's called Rey de la Selva, or King of the Jungle. Originally, you did this composition for a project called Para Mi Pueblo at the McNichols building.
Yeah, that's
Can you tell me a little bit what inspired this composition?
well, it was really kind of a mixture of the iconography and the kind of like contemporary idea of kind of imagining the king's card, a king's player's card.
A King of
like in the
Hearts,
deck.
perhaps? The King of Hearts?
So some of the symbology in the actual painting kind of reflects where that came from, and then I also made it reversible so you could hang it either way, either direction.
So can you talk a little bit more about the iconography, the Mayan iconography? I understand that your father's family is originally from the Yucatan Peninsula, and that
Yeah.
you were able to spend your summers there with your grandmother. How did that inspire some of the iconography of this painting?
Well, as far as the family first, it's something that I got to experience because my family's from Mexico, so I'm first generation in this country. So my experience is a little bit through that filter, and then going back every year to visit and stay with my grandmother. She still speaks Quiche Maya, so that's the language from down there. And as well, I would go and visit the local pueblos cenote, which is like a underground kind of sinkhole that's like a swimming, kind of like swimming freshwater. At one point it was used for that, but so that's kind of where the the Maya blue, it's also been used in a lot of different murals down there, very iconic for that region, including down in Chiapas and Guatemala too. They use that blue, but it's also, I was, while Emanuel was doing wonderful things in the 60s, my father was still figuring out how to migrate over here. I think he didn't get out over here till like 71 or 72. So then my lens, I was born in the 80s. So a lot of contemporary things influenced. So graffiti, street art really wasn't a thing, but we had a lot of murals growing up in Los Angeles. So a lot of the bold lines you get from that. The Jaguar itself is a symbol that it's about focus, intention, mystery, strength. It's about power and psychic foresight. So, and then the Maya also believed that each of their spots had like a different alternate universe. So it was like the multiverse was carried on his back. So they believed in multiple timelines. The heart, as you see on the palm, kind of represents, just a pledge of love and because they're actually wonderful mothers to their offspring. The rope is kind of symbolic of like a serpent's kind of scales, as well as like, golden rope. And then I also mixed a little bit of, contemporary modes. If you look closely, he has a tattooed tear, which in gang culture represents like you've been, you've taken a life, or so them being predators and whatnot, they're also guilty of that side of things too. So I guess guilt isn't really the word I wanted to use there, but because nature doesn't really have that law per se. But
so now we're going to go on to your interpretation of Ganesha. I think it's I'm fascinated that although you know so much about Mayan culture and are so inspired by it, that you are also finding subject matter in Hindu beliefs and culture. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, growing up in Los Angeles is kind of a cultural hub. I had a lot of influence, again, via some of the graffiti writers that were really internationally known, as well as just cultural mingling. I had friends who were from India, and I had friends who were actually from different places of Mexico, but their religion was from India. They're Hare Krishna, and some of the stories I'd hear and things that I find interesting now. So Ganesh is one of the deities over there that actually helps remove obstacles from one's path. They kind of but I kind of modernized it again. So I use a lot of mixed media. This is actually a screen print. I know Emanuel was doing a lot of screen printing through some others who were more established in the practice. I taught myself how to do this, and this was just an illustration that I mixed. You can see he has elongated ears, like myself, the kind of a symbol of a higher consciousness. The trunk is kind of amorphic with this what are known as pranas. So you do a hand mudras, and you would do this is the pran mudra, which is like vitality. He's wearing a crown, and there's a lotus, and you can see I've layered many different things on this. And the eyeball in the center is actually a block print. So I carved a block print and stamped it. So it's definitely a multimedia piece. This is, yeah.
I know that you studied illustration at Ramcat back in the day. You're only 35, so it wasn't that long ago, but did you create this piece when you were in
I mean, it was long ago. It was like 10 years
studies,
ago,
during
9
your
years.
studies?
Say again?
Did you create this during your studies or maybe afterward?
No, after. Yeah, so I graduated in 11, and then I created this around maybe 14 or 15. So 2014, 2015. And yeah. A
So
cat
we're
Von
going to
D
move.
owns that, actually. It's interesting.
We're going to move on to
Backstory.
this Aquarian Jaguar mural. So you also do a little bit of mural work. I believe you've done about 10 commissions. I know you were doing murals independently of the commissions since you were pretty young. But can you let us know a little bit more about this mural, where you painted it, who commissioned you to do it? I'm assuming it was a commission, and
Yeah.
what inspired it?
So this is actually not a commission. This is part of the collective that I'm a part of, the Birdseed Collective. We run a gallery in North Denver on 41st and Tennyson called Alto Gallery. And we were basically curating this wall to have different artists. I think we were going to do it bi-monthly or quarterly. But what ended up happening was, because of the thing, we kind of stopped on that. And during that kind of lull, I decided I was going to come and paint it. What you see on the left here is actually one of my illustrations of what I call the Aquarium Jaguar, just based on the Water Bearer by, I believe it's Peter Paul Rubens, but I might be wrong on that. Don't quote me. And through my education of hieroglyphics, like most of the Mayan writing is done and read in columns of two and read left to right, and mostly they're facing the left. Whenever you see the hieroglyphic represented facing right, it usually is in matters of like the spirit world or something more ethereal, which brings us to the actual imagery. You could see the jaguar kind of spilling the cosmos onto the Maya blue, just kind of symbolizing ebb and flow, kind of push and pull between worlds. The foreground, which is also the background, but it's also the cosmos. It's kind of meta, but and then there's also some butterflies coming out as well. And I don't have it on here, but I had some Maya hieroglyphics that kind of say a small narrative about it as well.
It's a beautiful composition. Is it still in existence? Does the mural still
Yeah,
exist?
it's still in the alley on 41st and Tennyson. It's actually a what was I going to say? It's basically up. It's only been there for a few weeks, maybe a month. So it's relatively new.
And then here is some additional work of yours. Again, the image that I see on my left is Kan, which is a Mayan symbol you could tell us a little bit more about. And then on the right, Krishna Mask, inspired again by Hindu culture. Can you tell us briefly about
Yeah.
each of these images?
So the one on the left is a sculpture using red clay, and it's a relief wall sculpture. I have one similar hanging in a show down in Denver now, and another one off of Morrison Road. But this one is based on the inner fire and like energy and life force, because Kan is the creator of the universe in Maya culture. And, it's also a serpent. So, when you hear Kukulkan, which is, Quetzalcoatl, Maya version, it's Kukulkan is our version of saying it. So this is a sgraffito style, which is actually when you make it look more ancient than it actually was. This was created maybe a few months ago. And the one on the right, Krishna Mask, is actually currently showing at a Vicky Myron gallery down in DU, Denver University, for one of their shows. The photograph is at Alto. I call it the Krishna Mask, but it wasn't necessarily inspired by Krishna, but I made it blue, which made me think of the story of Krishna's skin, just like a symbol of heightened enlightenment and just being very pure, so to speak.
And so really it's just called Krishna Mask because Krishna had blue skin, but otherwise.
And I wore it to Kirtan, the friend of mine led a couple weeks after I made it. It wasn't for the show either. I just kind of brought it, and it was interesting. So, and it has an owl feather and a lot of other symbolic things to it as well.
So now we're going to move on to a lot of your recent work is incorporating marionettes, and so we have an example of fox and a bison. Can you tell us when did you begin creating marionettes and what led to that?
It's an interesting story. My former boss at this educational program called Gold Crown kind of had an accident with her piano and kind of brought the parts over. And at that time, I was influenced by a lot of different elements, storytelling, and again, sculpture. But one of our local legends, Ravi Zupa, too, was doing some artwork very similar. And I decided to, maybe one day I'll try it. So I just kind of curated some of the parts. And then from there, I kind of forgot about it. Years later, I was at Camp Calumet down in Inglewood with a couple of local artists as well. We were all just kind of artists at this warehouse. And I just decided, maybe it was time. I found the bag, and I had this story and a bunch of people that wanted to work with me. And I just kept building on the story. And so the fox was created out of piano hammers and various fabrics. And I actually found that foxtail at a Native American trading store, and I felt like rescuing it. And then I sculpted the mask out of clay, or it's a stuffed matter called Sculpey. And then I cobbled the shoes from leather and cork and did everything very unwilling, like unknowingly well, because they actually move, which was interesting. I don't think it was intended, but they just moved really well. And then from there, the story just started building. And then
they came to life. They came to life.
Yeah, the bison's very similar. I carved him, carved the head out of wood. I found that fabric that kind of resembled, bison fur. And then actually, it's funny, I don't know if you can see on your guys' screens, but he kind of has a beard with a small blue tie on it, and that's actually bison hair.
Okay, I see him now.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's multimedia. I have four others, and I have been commissioned to make a few more for a project that's coming up that I'm not gonna disclose at the moment, but there's 7 coming up, and they're going to be really cool. It's a lot more contemporary. It's going to be hip hop based, so that'll be cool.
Thank you very much, Victor. And
No
we're
problem.
coming towards the end of our program here. So we want to give Emanuel a chance to tell us about what's next in his career. It's really hard to top what you've done already, Emanuel. I don't imagine you'll be able to top what you've done, but I would love to know what you're working on lately. Emanuel, are you still with us? We'll come back to Emanuel in just a second. I can't see or hear him at the moment.
There he
Uh,
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes. So
Okay.
Emanuel, what have you been working on lately?
Well, just lately, I just did a sculpture that a maquette that will be going to at the La Raza Park. It's a sculpture that relates to the with the mestizo and the Black Lives Matter issue with some symbolic imagery on it like that, and a large kind of huelga eagle. It'll be made in bronze and steel, and it'll be
That's beautiful. Is it
uh,
going to be in the center of the pyramid or elsewhere in the park?
it's gonna be yeah, in front of the pyramid. It's not gonna go in the center because they use that a lot for different things. So it'll be facing the front. It'll be on the south side of the pyramid. So
And I'm going to need you to turn your volume up in just a second, but I think that's really beautiful. And for those in our audience who don't realize, it's actually probably feels like full circle for you, Emanuel, because there were a lot of protests during the Chicano civil rights movement that took place at La Raza Park on 38th and Navajo. Does it feel like a homecoming for you to a certain respect?
absolutely, yeah, yeah. I think you're right about that. You know, we're
Can you
definitely.
turn up your volume, please? Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're definite. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. What's going on today definitely parallels to what was going on in the '60s with the civil rights movement. And it's a little different because there's more diversity involved, which is great. I love seeing more young people uh, in this movement, and people of all races. So it is definitely uh, something that I'm very engaged with, very excited about what's happening right now, and the amount of people that are joining in against injustice.
So I think that's a beautiful new contribution to your career. And I don't know how many years you've been at it, but well over 50 years, I'm sure.
I'll
Probably.
be on election day. I'm going to be 73. So
So since you were 13, so that's incredible that you've been dedicated to your art for 60 years now. So congratulations and thank you for your contributions to our community. I think our community has a real debt to you for the way that you've represented us in such a dignified way. Now we're going to just summarize and see what Victor's up to. I want to mention that rumor has it, Victor, that you are a nominee for an internship or artist in residency at Red Line Gallery. That's very exciting. I just wanted to say, I sure hope that you get it. It would be wonderful to have someone from our community represented. But what else, let's just say if you don't by any chance get that internship or that residency, what will you be up to?
I have a pretty solid plan to move forward with the Ojos en la Selva, which is my marionette troupe, and then I still have a lot of painting to finish, and just creating more sculptures and working with clay. But really, just kind of flushing out the ideas and making like solidifying the, I guess, like the professional aesthetics, and just continue to develop that and kind of go back to the basics and stay sharp.
Excellent. Well, congratulations for having an amazing start to your career.
Thank you.
Just for the audience to know, you're only 35, Victor, and you've
Yeah.
done a heck of a lot of work in a short amount of time. So
Thank
keep
you.
it going. Uh-huh.
I will. Yeah. Thanks, Emanuel. It was good to see you
Yeah,
and
good
see you.
to see you.
Yeah. Cool.
So we want to announce, well, first of all, thank you to Team LCAC for helping to put this together. And we're going to do 2 other Voces and Arte. One is going to be November 18th with Carlos Frésquez and Tony Ortega. And then our final one will be held on December 9th with Ana Marina Sanchez and Norberto Beto Mojardin. So we certainly hope that you can join us for the last 2 Voces and Arte. In addition, I want to announce that the exhibition Hecho in Colorado will be up at History Colorado through January 10th. And I want to encourage you to please attend a cafecito or a Friday morning coffee at 9 a.m. if you'd like to receive or participate in a tour, which I again host. It's generally about an hour tour, and it takes place every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. You would buy your tickets through the website for History Colorado. But if you can't attend the cafecito, you're welcome to contact me, and we would be happy to set up a private tour for groups of 5 to 10 people. Corey?
Thank you, Adriana.
I just wanted to thank you for putting on this show. In all my years, I've never seen a show like this at the Colorado History Museum. So I'm grateful for you for doing this. And
Thank you, Emanuel. Do you mind turning up just a tiny bit so that in case people can't hear you?
Yeah, I just was wanting to thank you for doing this exhibit, because I've never seen an exhibit like this before at this museum, and it's really a good contribution to the entire community.
Thank you very much, Emanuel. And it's a pleasure to honor the artists in our community have been so dedicated for a lot of you for 50 years or more. And then also to bring attention to some of our emerging artists in community. So thank you, Emanuel. Corey?
Thank you. We did have a couple questions for Q&A for our artists, so I just want to get to that real quick. Emanuel, we have one question here for you from Herman Martinez. He wanted to know what conversation ensued with Reyes referencing Tierra poster.
Okay, let me turn the volume up again here. What kind of what?
What kind of conversation ensued between you and Reyes referencing the Tierra poster that you created?
Well, I did a mural for Reyes located in the album, and so I knew him personally. I actually stayed with him for 5 months, but he's this poster kind of helped bring about a kind of publicized. It was publicized in newspapers. So it was something that I think helped his movement there. Got a lot of people behind him. But Reyes actually didn't even know I did this until afterwards. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
I didn't really talk to him until after we had done it. We didn't ask his permission or anything. We just felt that we should do it because the time was right and we had to do it right away, because they were taking, the law enforcement was taking these posters down everywhere we posted them.
Thank you, Emanuel. I had a question for Victor. One of the things that I've noticed since doing Voces and Arte is a lot of people that we've talked to have pulled influence from the graffiti culture, even if they don't really do it. And I thought that was really interesting. And I'm wondering if you can shed some insight on that. Why do you think that so many artists, even if they don't do graffiti, pull a lot of influence from that graffiti culture?
I would say because they're biters, but some of us still put in work. So I don't know. It just depends. Because like when well, it depends on how you use it. You know what I mean? Like for me, like growing up in Los Angeles from the 80s and 90s and practicing myself and seeing like, because like writers who are, like I said, internationally like world renowned for their practice is, you know, comes from my back neighborhood from Mota Yard and from the West. So like, you know, and then of course, you know, the juggernauts from the East, and then you've got writers from everywhere in between. But I think it was just one of those things where media helped influence the spread of it, and you know, it's got a cool factor, so people bite, you know, and like some people utilize what they've learned in their practice. So there's two different things here. You can't just grab a can and you know what I mean? It's not quite like that, but you know, the real ones know what's up.
Victor, do you think you would have become a visual artist if it wouldn't have been for graffiti?
I mean, I was drawing with crayons before I was doing graffiti. You know what I mean? Like I was an artist from day one. Like it was intrinsic. It's intrinsic. It's not, I didn't like, you know, rely on, you know, money or whatever and being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try this thing out for a couple years and then take, you know what I mean? Like I've been doing it forever. Like I would say,
And
like,
also,
you know,
you mentioned that you spent a lot of time as a young boy in your father's frame shop, and you came across a lot of artwork that way. Some of
Yeah.
the work that your father did. How did graffiti influence your artwork? There must have been some crossover there.
Well, like, yeah, like I don't know if you guys know who Chaz Bojorquez is, but he's a very prominent Los Angeles graffiti writer who's been writing since the 30s. You know, like he was one of those shoe shine boys that would write his name on the concrete and stuff, and then from there started writing in the LA River. Like I was my father's framed paintings for him. You know, Shepherd Ferry before he blew up. Like I had some of his stickers. My brother just had it because that's just how it is out there. Like I went to the same high school as Nipsey and a bunch of other heads, like Murs from Living Legends went to Hamilton, and like just it's West. It's different. It's not. It's like it's a culture that's very, very like the practitioners are very small, but the influence is very far reaching. So just being a part of it versus having a outsider's view, you know what I'm saying? So like that's how it influenced me. I mean, I'm a writer. Like some of my crew writes right now. Like the LOK is huge out there. JMU gave birth to UTI. Like I mean, it's just like I don't need to state too much more, but it's just what it is. It's influenced. Like again, the difference between grabbing a utensil and utilizing it versus understanding a cultural aspect and then applying it to a different practice.
It's very much a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle that you've lived and experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any more questions, Corey?
It looks like that is it. So thank you again to the artists and everybody else for attending today. We hope that this program has inspired you to come visit us at History Colorado when you feel comfortable doing so. Hecho in Colorado is open to the public until January 10th. If you happen to come late to the event, we will be posting all the Voces and Arte programming to our History Colorado YouTube page for future viewing. And I'm going to put that link and all of the other links that Adriana mentioned about the cafecitos and other Voces and Artes below in the chat box. If you're interested in learning more about the history of Chicano, Mexicano, and Latino people in Colorado, we encourage you to make an appointment at our research center. Visitors can request to see artifacts and documents not on display free of charge. For more information, visit the research center's webpage. And if you want to learn more about our partners, or the Latino Cultural Arts Center, they're on the verge of something truly special in the history of Denver that will elevate the artistic and intellectual contributions of the Latino and Chicano communities to a national level. They are developing a cultural campus across 3 locations in the Sun Valley and La Alma Park neighborhoods. You can visit the lcac-denver.org for more information. And lastly, if you liked this program, please consider donating to support History Colorado so that we can create more events like this. Thank you all again for attending, and thank you to Adriana, Emanuel, and Victor for an engaging conversation, and to Gloria Lopez for graciously volunteering her time to interpret this program. We hope to see you all again at the next Voces in Arte, October 28th. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Emanuel and Victor. Thank you very much. And I want to encourage our audience to consider acquiring an ofrenda kit. Victor Escobedo was one of the artists that we commissioned to create original works to enhance the ofrenda kits. We have 4 local artists, and we have artisans from Mexico and from Peru who made very beautiful items. So if you get a chance, please look at our website and consider acquiring an ofrenda kit to support the Latino Cultural Arts Center. Thanks again, everybody, for participating, and take care.
Thank you.
Cool.
Bye. Have a
See
good
ya.
night.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.